everyone, my name is Sam, and I am currently serving as the pastor at Highlands Lutheran Church in Denver, Colorado. I also serve as a chaplain at a number of different places in the Denver metro area, including Children's Hospital Colorado and West Pines, which is a drug and alcohol recovery treatment center, as well as an inpatient mental health care facility. And so I get to see and meet and do a lot of things and meet a lot of people in the Denver area, which I'm really grateful for. I'm also grateful to be here with you on Christmas Eve. I'm especially thankful that you've been on this Advent journey with the Rocky Mountain Synod, getting to hear from so many different people and so many different voices along the way. So our word for the day is darkness, which is perhaps a little bit unexpected for Christmas Eve, as we tend to celebrate the light even with sort of lighting candles during Christmas Eve service and thinking about the light that is coming into the world on Christmas Day. But I wanted to take some time to reflect on this word darkness and some of the ideas around it today. As I mentioned, some of the places I serve, I know through experience for myself and through working with other people that the holidays can be a really difficult time for a lot of people, especially for those of us that struggle with depression or mental health issues, and especially for those struggling with chemical dependency. And I think even for most of us, if we can't relate to the struggles of mental health or chemical dependency, we can probably also relate to the feelings of loss and grief that comes along with the holiday season. And oftentimes those feelings of loss and grief have this way of bubbling up for us during Christmas, and especially during Advent, all this time leading up to Christmas. And I think it's important that we take some time to actually sit with those feelings instead of sort of trying to rush past them and be with the joy and the happiness that comes with Christmas morning, but instead sort of taking some time to be with that grief and that loss or whatever feelings might be causing that darkness for us. I think one of the reasons that during the season of Lent, that season leading up to Easter, that we have these different days that help us deal with some of these complicated feelings around the holidays, like Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, right? These 3 days help us make space for all of those complicated feelings that we might be feeling that might not quite match up to the Easter holiday or the Easter season, but we don't really have that kind of designated time to feel that when we're in that season of Advent leading up to Christmas. And so taking some time to make space for that grief and that loss and that sadness can be difficult. And I wanted to offer us a space to think more about that or spend some time with those feelings during Christmas Eve as we get ready for tomorrow. Many of us might find the season of Advent and Christmas so difficult because we feel this cultural pressure to be joyful and happy and thankful all the time. And so I often wonder, what do we do when we just really aren't feeling that joy that others are expecting out of us? The past few years have been particularly difficult, and many of us have experienced a loss in some way. And loss can look like a lot of different things, right? From missed holidays to the loss of freedom to a loss of our sense of ourself or sense of our identity, or this loss of comfort and security. It can look like a lot of different things. Maybe we've lost jobs or homes or pets over the years. I know many of you have lost people, and perhaps you've lost parents or siblings or spouses or even children in your life. And those losses have this way of being this constant presence during our life, especially during the Christmas season or Advent season. And these losses, as they feel like this constant presence around us, they might feel like this shadow or this sort of cloud that's always there. And sometimes we're really aware of their presence, and at other times we have an easier time of sort of putting them to the side or ignoring them a little bit, while at other times they really have this way of just overcoming us and overcoming everything we do, and they affect everything that we do. And I wonder often if the holiday season, those losses, especially losses of people, feel really heavy for us. And it brought me to start thinking about the Christmas story and the way in which we tell it. And I started wondering, is there room for the sadness and the darkness and the loss and grief in the Christmas story? And I think so. In the Christmas story, especially in those moments as Mary is giving birth in this uncomfortable and unfamiliar place, we tend to focus on the light and the hope that Jesus is bringing into this world. But I think that there's room in this Christmas story for us to also focus on the darkness or the loss and the sadness that so often surrounds this story as well. And I think especially if we think about Mary, the two passages I chose for today depict this constant threat that Mary, Joseph, and Jesus were under during the time leading up to Jesus' birth and the time directly following his birth. We often forget in our telling of the story that this was a refugee family, that they were just trying to survive in this empire and in this kingdom that really didn't want them to survive. And in the midst of this experience for them, I imagine that Mary was especially feeling a sense of sadness about the many losses that she had experienced throughout this time. And so as I read these passages, I invite you to listen to the story from Mary's perspective. What might she have been feeling sadness around? What would a mother be feeling in this situation? And so the first passage begins before Jesus' birth in Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. So again, I invite you to really listen to this story from Mary's perspective and try to connect with the feelings she would have been feeling during this. And so starting with Luke chapter 2, verse 1, it says that at that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. This was the first census taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria, and all returned to their own ancestral towns to register for this census. And because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee, and he took with him Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was now expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for her baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no lodging available for them anywhere else. And then this passage from Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 and 14 describes some of the events that eventually forced the Holy Family to flee again once Jesus was born. And it says that when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child and kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." Now, in both passages, we hear the threat that this family is facing. I hear the stress and the anxiety that they must have been feeling as they needed to move from town to town to seek safety elsewhere. And I can feel that anxiety in my chest and my shoulders, and I can feel the sadness, especially that Mary must have been feeling, in my stomach, probably the same feeling she was having. And that sadness must have been so heavy for Mary. Right? Mary's birth story wasn't exactly what she had hoped for. In fact, even Jesus' conception was a scary event for her. The usual excitement and anticipation that many families feel when they are expecting a child isn't what Mary and Joseph got to feel and celebrate in those months leading up to Jesus' birth. Right? Mary had lost any sense of security she may have felt. She knew the prophecy for her son's life before he was even born, and I imagine she felt a deep sense of dread and grief about this even as she birthed her beautiful, healthy baby boy. There was a presence of darkness for her, knowing that the governments that they were living under constantly forced them to move, to flee their homes. And there was this shadow constantly looming over their little family as they tried to find safety and bring comfort to themselves during these really scary times. And so as we move into Christmas and we start to end the Advent season, I invite you to think about a couple of questions today. The first is simply identifying that which we are grieving. What are some losses that you feel present during this season? Just naming them can be really powerful, can help us start to process them. And so perhaps they are small, or maybe they're really big ones that have a big impact on your life every day. But what are you grieving today? And second, what brings us comfort in the midst of this discomfort? And how do we find ways to tap into that comfort in these coming days and weeks? Or how do we start to find the love and the support of our loved ones in our community when we feel that grief and that loss to be really, really heavy? Thank you for joining me for our reflection today. I'm grateful that you continue on this Advent journey and wish you much peace as you continue your reflections and continue to reflect and think about and spend time with your own community and family this Christmas Eve.